Water is life. Water and sanitation is indeed survival for billions of people around the world. And water is also a growing reason for conflict around the world. We must learn, when we have a scarce resource like water, that we should use it rather as a catalyst for cooperation rather than for conflict. I've seen this myself most recently in Darfur. I was trying to mediate in the conflict between the government of Sudan and the different movements. And part of my work was to travel around North Darfur to identify the leaders that I had to bring to the negotiation table. And I'll tell you about a helicopter ride. I'll take you on a helicopter ride, in fact, from El Fasher in northern Darfur to a village in the Jebel Mara area. Helicopter is not bad for seeing things. You sit in this glass hub and you fly 400 or 500 meters above the ground and you see everything very clearly. In this respect, in a very saddening way. First, when you get up from El Fasher, you see the huge camps around the city with hundreds of thousands of people living in the camps, while the city in itself may have had 50,000, 60,000 inhabitants from the beginning. You see huge tents all over. And then 10 minutes later in the helicopter, you reach the villages which are burnt down and deserted. That's the place from which the people in the camps had come. And then you fly further into the arid area of northern Darfur, and I was struck by the sand winning over the grass. It's called desertification. I never thought I would see with my own eyes desertification, but I did. When I landed, I asked the pilots about this phenomenon, and they said that during the 2 years they had been flying in this area, they thought the sand had gained one over the grass by 8 to 10 kilometers. Whether this is a reason, goes back to droughts or to climate change, I don't know. I would think it's a combination of the two. I then went to a village, and extreme poverty was reigning there. It was horrible. The market only had onions, I remember. And I went through the small alleys there, and suddenly there was a group of women chanting in their local language something. And I asked my interpreter, what did they say? What do they chant? And they said, they chant water, water, we need water, we need water. And the background was that there were 2 wells in the village, and one well had been poisoned by the militia, they said. And of course the other well was very quickly dried up. So what they had to do was to walk for 40 minutes to a place where there was water of very low quality, and bring that water back. 1.5 hours walk, and always women, unfortunately, doing this. I was then struck by how this really affected what I first saw in that village, the children not with black skin, but gray skin and empty eyes, and I knew that soon they would be hit by, because of this water being dirty, they would be hit by dehydration and get diarrheas and so forth. So when I got back to Sweden and the United Nations work in New York, I felt that this was the most practical thing to work with. Water and sanitation is a very concrete area, And we can certainly do something about it. It's a shame that we don't do it. So I engaged myself in the WaterAid organization, and also I became one of the Millennium Development Goals advocate for the United Nations. Unfortunately, still the MDGs are unknown to many. I have them here. It's like a play of cards here. There are 4 on each side. There are 8 goals. They range from the goal of fighting extreme poverty to sustainable development and bringing down the number of people without access to water and sanitation. In fact, I had a lecture once where I was struck by not connecting with the audience, talking about the MDGs, and I realized they didn't know what it was. So in order to illustrate the theme of my lecture, I took a glass of water like this one and said, okay, you may not know which the 8 goals were that were established 2000, which were to be achieved by 2015. One of them is MDG 7, which is sustainable development, and of course the water and sanitation goal. But let me illustrate what it is. This is a glass of tap water, in this case Sweden. In the lecture time it was the United States. This glass of water is a luxury, it's a dream for 885 million people around the world. Add to that 2.5 billion people don't have reasonable sanitation. That's a euphemism for toilets. This is the reason why 3,900 children under the age of 5 die every day out of diarrheas, dysentery, dehydration, cholera, and so forth. So I put this glass down, and I remember this was C-SPAN, and afterwards I got so many reactions. And it probably shows the importance of being practical and concrete about these goals. The beauty of really doing something about water and sanitation is that we could, by doing this the way we should, we could also improve the situation on other urgent international goals, in fact, Millennium Development Goals. We would, of course, quickly and radically reduce child mortality. It comes natural after what I've said. We would reduce the problems connected to maternal health. We would reduce the problems of gender equality, because it is the girls and the women that carry the burden in all respects in this way, in this area. We would, in fact, reduce extreme poverty and improve the conditions for education, for not least the girls again. So this shows the interdependence of the issues we are talking about. We need to see in today's world that everything is related. In fact, I would say that there is no peace without development, including water and sanitation. But there is no development without peace. And there is none of the above. No peace, no development, again, without the respect of human rights. And remember, the right to water is a human right. The peace aspect is important. You saw it, I saw it, in Darfur, where the access to water was an issue of conducting the war, the conflict. By poisoning wells, you bring the people into the camps and you take over the villages. And in very many parts of the world, there are huge border problems because of competition about water resources. A river goes across a border, and of course, the agriculture is very much dependent on the flow of this water, while perhaps the other country on the other side wants to have electricity and making dams. You can realize what this would mean even in diplomatic terms and in terms of conflict resolution. Israel and Palestine. Well, the settlers on the West Bank, Israeli settlers, use, I think, probably 4 times more water per person than the Palestinians, who have their olive trees to think about and not to speak about human needs. And you can imagine what this would mean also as a peace factor if we use water as a method of bringing people together, of sharing, rather than fighting about it. What a confidence-building measure to be introduced in the area of conflict resolution. So water touches everything. It is life in itself, and the fact that almost a third of humanity is living without access to water and sanitation is, to me, an absolutely unacceptable situation. And we can do something about it. There is a program. There are means to do it. Governments need to give high priority to the water and sanitation sector, both in the countries that have the problems and those who can bring resources to the issue. And we need to realize that we cannot deal with these problems alone. No one actor can solve this issue. It's a matter of division of labor and shared responsibility. That goes, in fact, for practically all global issues right now. We need to realize that there is a responsibility for the United Nations, of course, for which I've been working and still am. Is a responsibility for regional organizations like the European Union or African Union. It's a responsibility for the countries and the governments themselves. It's a responsibility for other actors, the business sector, with the technology and the training possibilities that they can acquire and distribute. It's a question of the universities, research, models that can be passed on to the field. And it's a matter of civil society, the non-governmental organizations, who have a growing role in the world. There is a need for individual engagement, which could perhaps reduce this hopelessness that I find often when we face the huge global issues. And civil society channels that engagement. In fact, I think we should all recognize that we should never point to someone else to solve our problems. We all have responsibility. No one can do everything, but everybody can do something. And if we realize that we have to have a shared responsibility and we all have a role to deal with these shameful situations, shameful problems, and unnecessary problems, then we can make a difference. And we need, in this, a combination of words that I like very much, that I once picked up in a book when I was about 25, a long time ago. And it is, we need passion and compassion. Passion meaning engagement, a mobilization of will. And compassion meaning pity for the suffering of mankind, as Bertrand Russell says. And the simple truth is that without passion, nothing happens in life. But without compassion, the wrong things happen. And in my view, we should mobilize all the passion we have, and you have it, I'm sure, all over, and all the compassion that we have, and I know we have it, to finally eradicate the problems of poverty and not least the issues that I've been speaking about today, the need for water and sanitation for all. That is a chance to live lives in dignity for all. Thank you very much.